Hello there, and the story ninjas in the house. Listening ninjas, go and gather everyone, because I'm sure it has been ages since you last heard a fairy tale. Or have I been telling lots of fairy tales lately? But nonetheless, let's listen to More Than Salt. And it's a fairy tale that's been rewritten by Kiddryn. So I found this one on the internet as well, and the story has been rewritten by someone who heard a story when they were much younger. And I'm sure most of us older children would remember stories from a long, long, long time ago that we can't find in books, perhaps. So be encouraged and inspired to write down the stories you remember from your childhood. But getting to this one, More Than Salt. Who loves salt here? I love a little bit of salt. Not too much though, but just enough to make things tasty. Well, once upon a time, a long, long time ago, well, that's when most stories began, isn't it? There was a kingdom far away, where most kingdoms are. In this kingdom, there once lived a king with three daughters. Now, the king was a fairly ordinary man, and sometimes wise, sometimes foolish, like most of us, really. He loved his daughters and made certain they wanted for absolutely nothing. One day, the king wanted to know how much his children loved him. Let's see how he goes about this. Well, he puts this question to them. My daughters, I crave to know how much you love me. Pray tell. The first daughter to speak was his eldest. Father, I love you more than gold or silver. Now we know gold and silver is a precious metal, so yes, that must be quite a bit. All the king was pleased that she loved him more than such valuable things and smiled at her. The second daughter, his middle child, spoke. Father, I love you more than diamonds and pearls. Oh, and rubies and emeralds too, or well, any other gem. And we know gemstones are precious and worth a lot. Again, the king was pleased with her answer and loved more than precious things. I think that appealed to him. He looked to his third and youngest daughter. Father, I love you more than salt. She spoke simply and quietly. I see many faces saying, what? Salt? The salt that I put in my chips? The salt that I put in my food? That's salt. More than salt. The king says, more than salt. Oh, the king was displeased with this answer. He couldn't believe his daughter had compared him to something as common as salt. Oh, come on, man. Salt? He was angry. He was thinking of all the gifts he'd lavished on her. Such was his rage that he banished her from the kingdom. She left without saying a word, simply carrying away a small box of salt in her pocket. Now the princess travelled to the next kingdom, where she worked as a shepherdess. Meanwhile, in her father's kingdom, something very strange happened. Would you like to find out? Yes, me too, so let's carry on reading. As soon as the princess had crossed the border, all the salt began to disappear. At first, no one noticed. There was salt for their meat, salt for their broth, salt for their bread. Soon, though, the people realized that no new salt was coming into the kingdom. No matter how hard the caravans, gypsies, or, well, whichever traders were coming by, they could not bring salt beyond the borders. And after a while, the king fell ill. And as he grew weaker and sicker, the royal physicians puzzled out, but what could be wrong? And finally they decreed that the king needed, what do you think? Salt. Yes, salt. Or he would perish. Until then, no one knew that salt was necessary for life. Tales of the king's plight reached beyond the borders, from town to town, and finally to a simple shepherdess in the next kingdom. A simple shepherdess living in a hut in the fields. And when the princess heard of her father's illness, she went to him. She carried nothing with her but the clothes she wore and her box of salt. For long days she walked until she reached the palace. She made her way to her father's room where he slept rather fitfully, tossing and turning. It was nearly the end of him. Mm-mm. Well, the princess bent over and kissed her father on his very, very frail, sunken cheeks. She sat down beside him. She cut a piece of bread and buttered it and sprinkled a little bit of salt over it. She managed to sit him up and encouraged him to take a bite. He slept again and woke a short time later, just a little bit stronger. So the princess called for a bowl of soup and sprinkled a little bit more of a salt in it and encouraged the king to eat just a little bit more. While he regained his strength slowly but surely, and a little bit more of the salt with each meal, he became stronger and he grew well. He wept and he held his daughter close because he realized that it was her who was nearby him. "Oh, daughter, can you forgive me for being such a foolish father?" "Oh, of course, father," said the princess. "I do love you." She meant it, really. And from that moment on, salt flowed freely into the kingdom yet again. The king never looked down on salt. Remember what he said: salt, common salt. And he knew that his youngest daughter loved him the best of all. And remember what she said: "I love you more than salt." Which meant, let's find out, that she loved him more than that which gives life. And that is a great love indeed. So today I was just reminded of a few things about salt. That yes, salt is quite precious. And salt was used as a currency, as a means to trade. Because, as we said, it was quite valuable. And that's where the word salary comes from. So we were watching a little documentary that took place in Morocco and Marrakesh. And we were reminded of these little facts of how precious salt is. So I'm going to encourage you to go and find out a little bit more about salt. And maybe you will look at your ordinary salt that you add to your food every day with different eyes. So until next time, and bye for now.